Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, David. How are you?
How am I? And same stuff, different day, of course.
Of course.
Let me tell you, man. We did the episode last week where we talked about Mike Fuller. I'm gonna address it right up front because I wanted everybody to be able to hear it up front. Mike Fuller. More information is coming to light. I'll talk about that in a second. But Mike Fuller. Last episode, somebody reached out to me. They said we weren't hard enough on Mike Fuller being a jerk in the first place, and I actually thought we kind of addressed that in the commentary. That we feel that the reason he was actually dropped from Guitar Center was both his comments and the fact that he was already a complete jerk. That his comments were nothing more than the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
So not 24 hours after we recorded the episode, I saw Mike Fuller post on his Facebook page that he had written proof that he had canceled his contract with Guitar Center sometime in March. And that they did not kick him out, he kicked them out.
Okay. So that's how he disappeared from being able to research for his stuff, used or new, was because he kicked them out.
I think that it was a business, in his mind, it was a business deal gone bad. That's what he's trying to portray to the world at large right now.
And they would have sent all of the brand new stuff that he had, probably hundreds, if not thousands of pedals, thousands, back to him, because that's what you do when you don't try to sell off the stock. You just send them back.
Well, yeah, in a perfect world, that's what we would have wanted to see happen. I mean,
no, they would have brought him down to almost cost so that they could pay him back. Even if they did owe him, they would pay him back. Because somebody tried to indicate that, oh yeah, they probably did that because Guitar Center was in the rears with him, which I highly doubt, but it's possible.
it's not only possible, Jim. From the way that I've heard they treat their vendors, likely. But that being said, that's only because the way that. So it comes back to having the some accounting background in my past. It comes back to cash versus accrual accounting, and the whole idea that like real companies are supposed to use accrual accounting. This whole idea that they know they have to pay out and what they have to have come in, and then that's how you get into things like Net 30 financing and all these different pieces of that. And guys like Mike Fuller are probably more in tune with the cash-based accounting, where they're looking at the checkbook and going, "Hey, I sent you all these pedals. Where's the money?" You know.
Yeah.
And you know what? His product, like, to be honest with you, because of his reputation, probably isn't selling all that well anymore. There was a time when it was very good stuff. Like, people looked at it, it was highly reputable. Right. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think most people kind of look at it and go, meh. Yeah, right. So, I don't think the new information that's come to light is all that relevant, really. I mean, obviously, you can look at that however you like, but it just seems to me that it's just people complaining at this point. Like, I did see somebody actually put the Black Lives Matter logo on an OCD. I thought it was kind of silly that they defaced the pedal, but hey, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it. And what was funny about it was that like the art was really good, and I always thought the Fulltone art was kind of garbage. So. Whatever.
It's very bland.
Yeah.
So yeah, he didn't pay anybody a lot of good money. I don't.
He's like one step above. He's like one step above putting stickers on the pedal and calling it decorated.
Yeah. I mean, the logo was the name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I actually, and he had some really unique enclosure designs too, like the OCD enclosure, which is like two bent pieces of metal with screws on the side. And then he talked about how well built they were, and I'm like, dude, you're not gonna tell me that's better than a cast Hammond enclosure, like.
Yeah,
You did that because it was cheap.
I can't see it happen.
Um, but yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about last episode. There's really not much more to really discuss there. We've had that conversation on this show before. Uh,
Yeah,
People with a bad reputation, people don't want to buy from you, and then you have a bad reputation and a bad social anxiety problem,
yeah,
following you around, and now you're in trouble. And
yep.
I can't believe there's a lot of diehards buying Mike Fuller stuff now. So it is
No,
what it is. But like we said, he'll have a career in music for many years to come, I'm sure, doing designs for other people and quietly not telling
an
anybody.
extremely silent partner.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
He'll have a non-disclosure agreement. It'll be the first one where it was ever non-disclosed that he was even part of it.
yeah, yeah, right. Um, so, um, what's new with you? I actually, you know what's new with me. Let's do what's new with you first. Anything happen?
With me, the gym opened up on Monday of last week, so today is Sunday. So today was 7 solid days being in the gym, getting back into training, um, trying to lose weight, trying to lose enough weight to, be a little bit more um, convinced of myself that I care about myself. So I I could actually feel it even after a week. I finally feel, strength coming back. My breathing is getting better. Um, but it's going to take some time. I mean, I'm not one of those people who thinks it's going to be overnight. I'm certainly
I want it
not
to
going
be
to fool
overnight.
myself into. Yeah, I mean, we all want a magic pill. I think that's the reason that the United States is so full of people with those so much instant gratification. Um, there's very little, wanting to work for, getting things, and I'm not saying that nobody does that. I'm certainly not, saying that the whole population is a bunch of lazy,
We look for the easy way
Americans.
out. We always have looked for the easy way out. It doesn't make any difference. And I don't think
Right,
that's
I think
necessarily a uniquely American thing. I think we all.
no, it's very human nature, but, when I say American, I'm just talking about the places that I've been and the knowledge that, or the people that I've dealt with when I was overseas, is that one of the things that Americans want is that quick. And we that's part of a much larger culture now, obviously, is that there's this, thought that, you just take a pill and you can get thin. Take a
I
pill and you can,
When you find it, let me know.
yeah, you can love your wife better. You can do, strange things. You can work out harder. You can because you took a pill.
You can be less
And,
depressed,
yeah, you could be less depressed. You
and
took a
then
pill.
you just kill yourself
And
instead.
then you get more depressed because you have to take pills to feel better about yourself. But anyway, feeling good about that. Thursday, so the day after this airs, that next evening, I will be I will be incogn you won't be able to find me much this week,
He will be
and
incommunicado.
until yeah, incommunicado, thank you. I almost said something completely wrong.
At least you didn't say
Um,
incontinent.
yeah, no, but, I almost said like, inconsolable or something, which I know was but,
That too.
I'll be I'll be completely out of the loop for, the rest of the week, doing practice tests and running through stuff, and of course, sitting down and memorizing ridiculous things like, ISO this and this to that, and,
Did you figure out
um,
yet how to tell when the USB cable is pointed up or down?
yeah, that's the only one I have trouble with.
That's the only one
Hopefully
anyone
that's
has
not on the
trouble
test.
with. I told Jim
Because you
before
ever
this
notice
episode.
that
I told Jim
yeah, go
before the
ahead.
episode the proper procedure for inserting a USB cable. Plug it in, and when it doesn't work, you flip it over. You plug it in again, and when that doesn't work, then you flip it back to
Then
the
you
original
flip it
position,
over
and then you plug it in, and it
and
works fine.
it'll go right in. I'm not sure why that is. But it's true. It's true. Um, anyway, yeah, trying to get myself down to, everybody tells me that 150 pounds is probably where I want to be. So I have a small frame. You'll see that when you meet me. I'm a very light frame person.
He's a tiny dancer.
100, yeah, 150, 160 pounds is probably about right for me, but I'd like to get down to 120. So that's something that I'm trying to do. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes and we'll see where it comes from there. Of course, I'm older and I do have a lot more muscle than I give myself credit.
Hey,
Um,
hey Jim, do you know what's happening later this month?
what's that?
Gear Fest.
I know. And
Online Gear Fest. Sorry guys. It kind
what
of
we should
sucks.
do is probably do a Discord thing like this and
I
get
think
some
that's
people
exactly what we're
in.
gonna do is we're gonna have Discord running.
Then
Um
we can do some like live
or
reaction video.
or we can do the Facebook groups thing.
Yeah,
So they have like a room in there. And I think during Gear Fest we can all be in the room and then you can all be doing your own thing and like
yeah,
you can unmute your microphone and talk when you want, whatever, and we'll do our
yeah. I think in
virtual hangout
Discord we
there.
can have 20 people. I think we can
Yeah,
have
so
that.
our Discord, so right now we're actually doing this episode on Discord tonight for the first time. And we're
Yeah.
using the Practical Guitarist Secret Society server to do it, which was originally reserved for uh, the podcast Patreon supporters, but I think we're going to open it up because
Mhm.
it makes sense for us to open it up to some extent. I obviously want to lock down who can get into the recordings chatter. We'll have to have a private Discord server for doing the recordings. But
Right.
the idea would be that this way we could have like we'll have like a practical guitarist uh what do they call it? Earfest
Yeah,
Discord, which that's
yeah.
all it'll be. But it is gonna be fun.
Just do some.
They're doing they're doing their typical like here's some seminars. You'll still be
Mm,
able to contact your rep. I
yep,
have a feeling their rep is probably going to call you during Gearfest. Um
I get a feeling.
and I have a
So we'll all be sitting here on our phones.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that the deals are going to be just as good as they are in person, because my understanding is that they're actually negotiating deals specifically for the online version of Gearfest, which means that they're even talking to people like Mesa Boogie and seeing if they, because Mesa is like notorious for not doing deals, that they may
Oh
actually
yeah,
be
they
able to
don't.
get some of that going. Because if you didn't know this, if you go to Gearfest, they actually do deals on some Mesa Boogie stuff, but it's not like hundreds of dollars off. It's usually like, hey, we got this special color we ordered a couple of, or we have this one
Right.
that somebody didn't want and we decided to mark it down. Which is better than you're gonna get from anybody else. Unless you have a local dealer who will cut you in and get in trouble for it.
This
um
is the first. Also, folks, this is the first time I'm recording on my end, so I'm kind of looking this way once in a while to see how the video is doing and how the
no, he
audio
just
is
doesn't
doing.
care about
So,
anybody. Don't worry about where we're looking. And that's the funny thing. So when you record video, like the whole idea is that you're gonna look at the audience. Are they gonna? I'm looking at a webcam. There's nothing here. Like I'm not looking at
I
you
know.
on the other end.
No, I know. It's like I have one of those what do you call those what do you call it? Can't let me see if I can get a trying to get a reflection of it, and instead my phone's showing a pic. Let me see if I can. There we go. So I have one of those lights,
Yeah, he's got a
folks.
ring
That's
light.
what's over here.
He has a ring light.
So that's why I got to get another one for this side because that's why this side of my face is, I know I'm beautiful on both sides, but
I
anyway,
just glow in the
so
dark.
yeah, yeah, Dave doesn't even use lighting.
I live in
Um,
the Chicago
David
suburbs,
is
and so I glow in the dark because they don't care about their citizens and they just pump
he's near a
radioactive waste into everything.
yeah, I was gonna say near a nuclear power plant. And
Those are all in Kankakee actually. They built like 8 power plants down south of the city, or it was like 8 or 11 or something, and they were finished in the late 80s. And because of the meltdown at 3 Mile Island or whatever, they decided they were never going to turn them on. So there's like
yeah.
eight fully staffed nuclear power plants where nothing goes on that we're still paying for as part of ComEd, which is wonderful. Yeah,
Well, and that's the problem. You can never really completely shut those things down.
no,
A
so
nuke doesn't go away.
no.
There was talk.
Even if you
I don't
bury
know
it in
that
Yucca Mountain, it doesn't disappear.
there was talk of somebody saying, "Okay, let's get it on a let's get on a rocket headed towards the sun." Do you know how hard that would be and expensive? I mean, the sun is not just year. That thing is hundreds of years away. I mean, by rocket, that would be forever.
No,
I mean,
it would
you'd
take
have
you
to
several
somehow get it
years.
into a decaying orbit and
It would
hope that
take
it doesn't
several.
hit a planet or
It
something.
would take several years. And the reality is, if you shot it at the sun has enough gravitational pull. You'd be surprised by how
Yeah,
close you get. But you would have to make sure you're not going to
that's
hit
what I'm saying.
anything else.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You'd have to get it into a decaying orbit of some kind to the sun, and miss Mars, or I mean, miss Venus, miss Mercury, miss all the asteroids that shoot through on the way.
I
People,
would guess missing all the debris is probably easy, but the getting it into orbit and all that is the hard part. Although we're
yeah,
building a rocket that looks like something from the 1950s, according to SpaceX. So, there's hope for everything.
yeah.
Um, I got some new stuff, Jim.
Sending a Cybertruck up there.
Yeah, I got some new stuff. Look at this, man.
Yeah,
Like you're gonna like this. This is like the kind of
I
stuff
know.
that you like, right? So I got the Analog Man beer koozie,
Yeah,
right?
nice, huh?
We do pedals
I
right.
like.
We do
I
pedals
do
right.
like that.
That came with
We do
something
pedals are
else. It came with something else. Actually, hang on one moment now. I have to move and get something.
all right. So while David's moving about, I'll keep you entertained. Um, it doesn't take much because he wasn't gone very long. Um,
So
you're back.
I knew right where it was, and Jim was delightfully entertaining you while I was gone.
Yes, I
Um,
was so entertaining.
so
I
analog,
juggled.
it's from Analog Man. We do pedals right. This is
Yep.
a white King of Tone, folks, which is really cool. Um, this pedal, I know it's hyped to all hell. And I've actually played one before I had this one. Um, I gotta say, I really think that it lives up to a lot of the hype. To be completely honest, I know a lot of people are
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it lives up to the hype or whatever. No, it does. It's really really good. Um, like to the point where it's kind of frustrating because I could have had this like 2 or 3 years ago, and I sat on it, um,
Yeah.
which was not good. So my impressions of it, um, hang on, I'm looking for my camera settings while I do this because I know I'm out of focus now. Um, my impressions of it that it's exceptional at what it does. Um, and so what does it do, right? It's basically just a Marshall. I think it's a blues breaker, circuit. That if you've ever heard the real pedal sounds kind of crappy. Like it sounds kind of fuzzy and like kind of like gross, like a Marshall and Fuzzface like had a baby, and it didn't
Yeah.
sound like Jimi Hendrix. Um, that's kind of what it sounds like. It's a trashy sounding distortion pedal, but he's obviously done a number on the circuit. He's picked the right transistors to go in, or not transistors, but op amps to go in it, and
Hmm.
it's got the right feature set. So I'm still using it stock, and actually, um, I find that the overdrive side of it is pretty much where I live. With the drive, like 1 o'clock, and the volume at like 2 o'clock, tone at noon, and it gives me a real warm sounding kind of like Marshall extra overdrive sound. And then
Hmm.
I can use the boost side, which is the secondary side, pretty much
Right.
neutral with a lot of volume boost to hit the amp harder, and I can use it as
Hmm.
like a solo boost. Which
Yeah.
now I understand why people want the 4 jack mod for this thing, which easily puts the price above $300. I think it's around $340 or $50 if you do that. But I can see why people would want to do that because you could put pedals in between and then use the
Uh,
final pedal as a volume boost. But no, I like it. Like I've been using it in the Kemper. I used it in the Mark V already. I do plan on doing a video with it. I want to show what I like about it, but I also I have a backlog of videos I need to do, including a video for the P90 pickup giveaway, which we're going to be starting probably soon. I'm hoping to get that done this week. I've just been inundated with other things, and I haven't been able to sit down and actually install the pickups yet. But my video setup is running real well, so I think we're going to be able to knock it out and do it real quick. But
yep.
I have 4 or 5 other videos I need to shoot. I need to do that. I'm doing Tone Junkie videos. I'm doing more. I'm doing the more on the Liverbird stuff, which I was playing around with today. My ears were shot, so it's just basically useless. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get anywhere with it. Um, and I'd like to get that done. and then of course the P90s, and then maybe we'll talk about the King of Tone. And I actually have a video I need to do for the creepy face fuzz that Jason Fuzzmonger sent to me. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. But we are also an audio podcast, so if you don't really want to watch us, you just want to listen to us, you can look up our audio podcast as well, and just get the episodes that way. So I
Yep.
know we've got some new YouTube blood, because I see the stats and I see how many people find us
Yep.
organically. So
That's good.
anyway, I'm gonna
Um,
I have some ideas on how we can improve our experience for YouTube too. We're gonna talk about that, Jim, because that's good stuff.
yeah, well, yeah, I was so I've done some videos outside of YouTube, so I need to sit down and do some stuff for this. I've been I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Can everybody see that? Yeah.
Jim has been studying for work crap for nearly what, a month now, a month and a half.
This is one of several books. Yeah, it's been going and going and going, and I gotta take the let's see if I yeah 501, and it's gonna be wow. So I'm not trying to fool myself into thinking that I'm bulletproof, but I need to get I want to get this onto this contract. So that's on the personal side, and that's outside of the scope of this channel, but it's certainly what's been pushing me the last few months. Um, Looking at picking up a position, and I have to have a secret clearance, so I'm going through a lot of stuff with that. It's it's not fun.
Well, and right now we've got
Not
you're off of Guitar Center because of the
yeah.
COVID-19 and all that craziness. Um,
You would think I'd have more time.
no,
No.
because I know I don't have more time, and quite frankly, I only have one job. I only have one job.
I sat down and actually played guitar, like, just playing, not worrying about, like, what I was gonna do. I just laid down a track and then played over it for about an hour and a half the other day, and,
That's the first
felt
time
good.
in like how long? Like weeks?
And it's been months well, weeks, yeah, weeks at least, since I actually was able to just play, and I wrote a little, 1 or 1 minor 6, 4 or 5 thing, um, because I wanted to play in a major key.
Mhm.
Wanted to force myself to play in a major key, that was the only objective, and see what it sounded like and play it in, like, 4 or 5 different places. I really meant to record it, I really did. I meant to record it, warts and all, and I don't know. I'm trying to lose weight, I'm trying to, get through this stuff for work, so I can pick up this new job. I'm supposed to start Monday of next week. So as you're hearing this, I would start 5 days later.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just been, I'm highly motivated. Don't get me wrong. Monetarily and personally, I'm highly motivated. The job I could do, I could pick it up tomorrow. It's what I did for years for Verizon. Um, the problem is now to work on a government uh, network, you have to have a Security Plus certification.
Yeah. You'll
It
get
doesn't
it.
matter what. It doesn't matter that you've got 30 years of experience. You have to have this ridiculous test. And from what I understand, here's a kicker: the test questions, not all of them will count. Some of them are just trials of the questions. Oh, that's nice. Let's use these people that are taking the test and on pins and needles about it to try them out.
Yeah.
I I,
Yeah.
I want to punch CompTIA in the mouth. Um, and the other side of it is that each section is weighed differently. So,
Correct.
like a question in this part might be worth more than, or well, is more than a question in another part, so on and so
Right.
forth. There's like
And it
there's a
has to do with the risk mitigation.
Yeah, skewed by over 10%. And ridiculous stuff, as you know, because you've studied, some of the stuff, it's like asking, a guitar player, "So, if you were playing, a 1942, Epiphone, whatever, and nobody has one because they don't exist anymore. Because the last one, like, if you were asking somebody if they had a dodo bird, what would you feed your dodo bird? I don't know. They don't exist anymore. Who cares? But that's the kind of thing that it's in there. Things that you would never like, oh, don't use WEP security. Who uses WEP? Nobody uses WEP. They haven't used WEP since day one. That's the
Yeah.
90s. I mean, and it's
Uh,
still in there. And this thing's been updated 5 freaking times. This is 501.
Do you know
I
what
mean,
do you know what kills me about the CompTIA training for that? So like, it's only as good as the hardware you're deploying it on. Because
yeah,
we'll get back to music in a second. But like, I had a router, and it was from a major manufacturer, and I won't say who, because obviously, like, this sucks, and
Cisco.
nobody should have this. Shh.
Yeah.
And nobody
Shh,
should have
it's not
this.
Cisco.
Nobody should have. Well, so they had a web GUI, right, for the router, and
Yep.
they needed me to get access to it. And I was like, I really don't want to reset this, because I'm gonna have to go around. I'm gonna have to touch all 5 machines they got and all this, plus their phones and everything. So I'm like, all right. I come in as a consultant. I dial into the
Yep.
router, the web page, and I'm like,
Yep.
I can't. I don't know what the username and password is, so I try the default one, because most people just leave it on the default.
And it worked.
No, no, Jim, better than that.
Oh,
So it didn't work. So I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? I wonder if I could see something in the code behind. So I hit F11 to bring, view source. And I was digging around. And in the source code, I searched for the word password, and I found the password. It stored it in like a JavaScript file that was openly served up on that router. I'm not kidding.
these and
This
these are
wasn't that
things
long
they're on the
ago.
test.
This was
I
like
mean,
6 years
they're
ago.
in the test. Yeah.
This was like 6
That's
years
one of
ago.
the yeah, I believe that. I believe that. The whenever somebody asks me to do just what you're talking about, first thing I do is I try to find a router I can break into.
Hmm.
I go for the low-hanging fruit, and then I work from there. And then I tell them this is what I found.
Yeah. So
Um,
so don't shore up your stuff. And you know
yeah.
what? Actually, this is relevant to music, because now we got all these mixers that are Wi-Fi enabled with the iPad thing. So like, if you really want to have a good time, just show up and have your laptop computer, and sit down and hack into their Wi-Fi
Yep.
network, and then mess with
Yep.
their mixer on their performance.
Because once you get into
Yeah,
that
hear that
Wi-Fi
guitar? I'll
network,
fix this problem.
it's all over but the crying. Turn the guitar all the way off, turn the
Yeah,
singer mess with their stuff, put the feedback in. Oh my god, these guys suck.
modify their effects.
I'm telling you, if you're what David is saying, happens.
Yeah, I know it
There was a
does.
there was a there was a guy on an airplane. This didn't get a lot of press. There was a guy on an airplane who hacked in using the entertainment system, hacked into the navigation system, and flew the plane sideways for several thousand feet
I mean, it's not funny, but it
before
is
they
funny,
performed.
because it's like, why in the
Yeah.
hell should he even be able to do that? Who is the engineer
Right.
that made it so that he could
Who's the
communicate with? You know
who's
what I
the
mean? Like,
engineer that said, "Wonder if we should put the entertainment system
on the same,
in the
yeah.
network with the" I
You'd think that the
I
navigation would
remember
not even be like remotely tied into that.
I remember in the year 2000 this being a problem, but I can't imagine that being something that you would want to
Well, that's because they don't
be able
hire
to.
people like you that would be certified in this to
Oh, no,
help out the
they hire
engineers.
somebody who can really take a test well, got through that thing, and has never done the job.
Yeah,
That's what they
or they
that's what
or
they
they have
do.
no security background whatsoever, but they're a really good developer. And like,
Because
that's,
they could yeah, they memorized the difference between blue snarfing and blue snarking. Oh boy, one letter. A Smurf attack versus and a DOS versus DDoS, or
yeah.
a SYN attack, which is a specialized DDoS test. And that's the other thing about this test. There are more right answers. I hate tests that have more right answers. If there's anything that shouldn't happen, it's a test with a more right answer.
Yeah.
What kind of is that?
Well, this test is designed to make sure that you know what you say you know. But the problem is in our field, knowing what you say you know only lasts like a couple hours. Things change
Right.
literally minute to minute. And
Yep.
so it's useless the day it goes into printing. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so back to guitar related mischief. Um,
What? Guitars?
Jim,
What are those?
I sent Jim a picture this morning,
Oh
and
my
I'm not
god.
going to give away the name of the person because they might listen to the show. They actually might listen to the show. Um, but it was so funny. They posted a picture of their rig, and it led me down this path of like, huh? Like, wait, what are you doing? Like, so if you've ever frequented like pedal boards of doom, for example, and you've looked at people's rigs there, and you've ever had a moment where you're like, wait a minute, why is the pedal order so messed up here? Or, um, I don't understand exactly what's going on and what goes in the effects loop and what goes on the regular. So what I saw today, and it prompted another question. What I saw today was two Kempers in a rack, which is $4,500.
Both
Uh,
active, by the way.
yeah, both turned on. Neither of them had their effects loop engaged, because you can tell from the color of the icons or the color of the
Yeah.
buttons. Nobody had their effects loop engaged. Um, the board that was sitting next to it did not have a remote on it. It had a Mastermind controller, a couple of drive pedals, the Strymon trifecta.
Yeah. Yeah. The Strymon trifecta, not Strymon trifecta. Talking about the Strymon trifecta. The what is it?
Yeah, the Holy
The
Trinity.
yeah,
The
the
Blue
blue
Sky.
sky,
No, it's the Big Sky. Big
big
Sky,
sky. Sorry.
Timeline, and Mobius.
Yep.
And I
Mobius.
see this, and I go, you have the Strymon Trinity on your board, and you're running a pair of Kempers. Like, what are you actually trying to achieve with this? And then it dawned on me, the effects loop isn't engaged, which means that his modulation, delay, and reverb boxes are not in a loop. They're out in front of these Kempers. And on top of that, he's got delay running, or he's got a reverb running on the Kemper while all this is going on. So it's like, what exactly does this even sound like? I had like this moment, and I was like, wait a minute, you're running Strymon pedals in front of your
Well,
Kemper.
I get. Let's say that the Kemper.
Mind-boggling to me.
Let's
Mind-boggling.
say that the Kemper is being treated as a pedal platform, right?
Right.
Let's say that
That's
it
a
is.
really expensive pedal platform.
Okay. Yeah. At this point, of course, you don't know when the picture was taken. We don't know when. Well, maybe we do.
No,
We
I
don't know
do.
when
I do.
But I'm thinking to myself, why not just buy two of those Strymon pedal things that are cab
Yeah.
models and
Put
put
two
them in there?
iridiums
I
to
mean,
save yourself thousands of dollars.
that's what I was. Yeah, put a pair of iridiums in there and sell your Kempers. I mean, I honestly don't understand that mentality. At that point, you're playing keyboards on the guitar, so I mean, and we know
I
that
mean,
that's
basically,
padded.
with all of that stuff that he's got, like that's exactly what his guitar sounds like. It
Stereo.
very much in that realm.
Yeah,
And then Jim
it,
points out, he goes, "Well, look at the guitar." He's like, it's obviously somebody who likes to show how much money they have, because he points out this is boutique guitar.
I'm
And
looking at this boutique guitar, or what I think is a boutique guitar, because I
yeah,
thought it said Framus or something
no,
like that.
yeah, I thought it was
Come to find
Tyler.
out, it's a piece of crap.
It's a
It was a
Tagima from
yeah,
Brazil. A Tagima.
which goes for, what did you say, $229 new.
Yeah, between 229 and 300.
So you've got I don't know how many $1,000 worth of stuff. $10,000 worth of stuff.
$4,500 for the pedal for the amplifiers. Probably $2,000 for the pedal board. Another
Yeah.
$500 worth of cabling, and
Yeah.
board, and
And
then
then a
$300
$200
guitar. It doesn't get more practical than that. It doesn't. I was crying when I saw this. So that brought up that's
If you're
okay.
gonna try to be
Look,
hipster, go hipster.
look, I don't
Come
know.
on.
I look, I don't know. I mean, maybe this sounds good. Like maybe he's got a purpose, whatever. I'm not, but it is funny because like it defies logic. If it wasn't for my
It
horse, I
defies
would have spent
gravity.
that year in college. Um, I will say this though, it brought up another interesting conversation because I'm a member of a very
I will
particular.
say so
Okay, go ahead.
I will say I will say one other thing. It is a possibility, however slight, however remote, that the Kemper and the blue sky, or I mean the blue sky, the big sky and the Mobius and the timeline and all other stuff belongs to the church. And the only thing that he had to buy was that freaking piece of crap guitar that he brings in every week.
I would suspect actually the following: he has one board. It's got all his stuff on it. When he uses his Kemper, he's just using the drive pedals. Everything else is off. Kemper's doing delay and reverb. The Kempers, as in multiple
Could
Kempers.
be. Yeah, could be.
But anyway, that's probably what's going on here. You know, he's got these Strymon pedals and he's never sold them or whatever. You know, whatever. Um, but that brought up the other interesting question. So I'm a member of a pretty exclusive group on Facebook. I don't even actually know what the name is offhand, but it's a bunch of guitar techs and some
What?
actual like civilians um,
Mhm.
who share pictures of famous rack rigs. And I got into this
Oh
group.
yeah.
I got into this group because somebody else mentioned to me that they were a member of this group and that I should join it. And I went and I joined it. And I saw yesterday, or it was no, it was longer than that. It was probably a week ago. Somebody posted a picture of two refrigerator racks with two mini racks on top, with no less than 10 Axifexes across the two of them. And I believe those were the Axe 2 Ultra Plus or whatever, the one right before the Axifex 3. Um, which would further make some things crazy because down below in the comments it says whose rig this is. And this is the technician that works for Neil Schoen posting a picture of Neil Schoen's rig. Now,
Yeah, I can
here's where
believe
this
that.
gets scandalous. So this this photo is Neil Schoen's rig, but Neil Schoen is supposed to have a PRS amp endorsement. And he's been an endorser of the Archon for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and
But
he's not using the
yeah.
Archon anymore. That's for
Like
sure.
I think the only place the Archon sits is on stage, right where you can see it. I saw
I
them
think that
years
may
ago.
actually be true.
Um,
And or this is right before he started using the Archon, which is a
yeah, that's
possibility.
possible.
But the
Because the
date,
acts are old.
well, yeah, no, those are the ones right before the 3. The 3 is only like 2 years old. So
Yeah.
I would think this is right in the time period where he should have had that endorsement, but I don't know for
Mhm.
sure. It's still a
Yeah.
possibility. But even so, he's got, so what I figure is A rig, B rig, right? So one refrigerator rack and mini rack is for the A rig
Yep.
that goes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. And then the other rig is for Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so
Right. They fly them ahead of him.
right. So, but still, 5 Axifexes in one rack. What are you doing with these? What? And
Yeah.
and you saw the foot controllers. There's like 10 foot controllers on the floor. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I would assume what his tech is doing is he's got a foot
Yeah.
controller backstage so that he
For
can
himself.
fade the individual ones in and out as needed.
Yep.
But like,
Yep.
why not just use presets and scene modes to get all of the XFX like heavy lifting done? Instead, you've got 5? Like, what is going on here?
There's
eh,
there's two things to remember with Shown.
but
All right. Ego. It's huge. You should
I
see.
think that's
I
the
think his
big one.
I think his ego has a bus by itself. And then the other one is that Shown. He's an awesome guitar player. I mean, I've seen the guy live several times, and I just saw him 2 years ago during the last tour.
I'm
Incredible player.
not
But
disputing how good he is.
no, no, I'm just. But as far as tone goes, even back in the '70s, his guitar tone was very precise, and he even said himself, he's not going for a guitar tone. He goes for a searing sound that he wants to be like a horn section. So he has a lot of effects for a reason. Um, I think one of the things that I was reading about was where they were talking about his rig during a certain song. It's like "Don't Stop Believing" or something like that. They're doing this huge, and then you come to find out it was like this little freaking piece of crap amp that they had. That it was just him into this amp,
And well, it's because they could
and
also make that amp sound like it was blowing up too, which is
exactly,
um.
exactly.
Here's where I think this is funny though. So on your XFX 2F Ultra or whatever plus, you can do, I believe you can have up to 4 amps in a rig,
Yep.
and I think you can have two of them active at any time. You can have two complete effects chains, and yes, you can max it out, but you'd have to have a lot of stuff going on to get him to where they say I can't do this anymore. Um, and he's got 5 of them, so I would assume 4 are active with one as a spare.
Yep.
Which makes me like, what in the hell is? And I think ego is a big part of it, but I also think
Yeah.
like over preparedness, and I think excess. The idea that like, well, when we went out in the '70s, we took 8 Marshalls, so I'm gonna have 5 X. It's like, you even know what this does? No, my tech sets it
Well,
up for me.
and again, so Journey comes from that, the arena rock,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
right? But he comes from playing with Carlos Santana. We've talked about that before. Um,
Debatable.
but yeah, if you think about the time frame, right? If you think about the time frame when he broke off from Santana and Journey started to come to where, oh, they had their first hit. It was just before
Yeah, that
uh,
insurrection.
Steve Perry joined the band. Yeah. Um, so just as you're coming to that movement, there was another big band that hit the stage, and that was a band called Boston, right?
Right.
And what did Boston have for a real rig? I mean, when they went on tour, that oh yeah, look at me, I'm just like Peter Frampton. I've got all these, got all these huge amplifiers with me.
Yeah.
I think actually they were right at the same
And
time.
in the studio, they
Yet
were using every trick in the book to make it
he
like,
was, yeah, and on stage it was all trickery. He used his Rockman, and so they had empty cabs. And who was using real cabs, who was using fake cabs at the time? It's hard to tell. Um, there's a lot of stories that Ace Frehley wasn't doing his stuff. It was so I was, we talked a lot about how I came up in a different time and there was different music and so on and so forth. So I was sitting down because going to the gym, I get to listen to a lot of different mixes of music, right? And I sat down and I started listening to like the hits of 1971, the hits of 1972, the hits of 1973. And you know what? You know what I found?
what?
I've just got a lot more stuff to look at because I've got a lot more years to look at. It's not necessarily that any one of them or small 5 to 10 year section was better. It's just that there's a lot of it. Um, a musician will, and rightly so, argue that there was also different things that had to do with this. There was um, the fact that they gave musicians more time. A lot of musicians wrote their own stuff, and so on and so forth, and this, that, and the other thing. Um, and that all seems to be right. There was more time for a career. Now it's like, okay, we got you. We're going to plant you in this position. We're going to make you look like this. We're going to hire stylists. We're going to hire this. We're going to hire that, and we're going to make you. You know, you
They don't
can't
look
come
for
up
artists
like
that they don't look for artists that have already done that for themselves. Like they
right.
look for artists they can mold.
You can't find an Aerosmith. You can't find a Cars. A group of people who played clubs and
Oh, I
and
I
worked
would
their
argue
butts
I
off.
would argue you can find those people, but they don't want to.
But right, right, and one of the arguments I remember reading about that the reason they don't want to find these people is these people know what they want. If I take If I take a Joe Schmo off the street who is great at karaoke, and I say, okay, I'm going to put some tracks behind you. We're going to have some people faking the music behind you, and they're going to be mostly dancers. Okay. All I need you to do is hit this mark at this time, this mark at this time. We're going to get a personal, we're going to get somebody to make you look good. We're going to make get somebody to you look pretty. We're going to do all this stuff and so on and so forth. And then we're going to present you to the world. And we're going to blow this song up by putting in everything. It's going to be in video games. It's going to be in Wonder Bread commercials. It's going to be in, Chuck Wagon. Everybody's going to see it all the time. And we're going to make you a star. If you're a wide-eyed child, of course. Why wouldn't you? That's that's the dream, right? And it
I mean,
and
yeah, especially back then when you were naive, and nowadays,
right.
like nowadays, the people that have prepared for it and are ready for that to happen, they don't want to touch them because that means they can
Oh,
negotiate a deal. Anybody who says
right.
when you get him a contract, they say, "Let me call my lawyer." Um,
Yeah, they don't want
they
that.
don't want that. That's the last thing they want because they can't
Why
rob
would
you
they want you
blind.
right. Why would they want you to be able to contact your lawyer? Why would they want you to look into how much money you're gonna make per spin on Spotify? How much why would they want you to see what you're gonna get? That and, of course, then there's the people that are savvy enough that want to, build their careers by creating music themselves, right? I mean, they're YouTube channeling. We're YouTube channeling, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
the these young people are making a killing by doing that. They don't need you. They don't need the
No.
record company.
No. I mean, and I think for the most part, you're correct. Um, Distribution deal is no longer an issue. Like you don't need distribution. Um,
No, why would you?
you really don't even. So this whole idea that like back in the 70s and 80s when you needed a record company was because you couldn't afford to go into a recording studio by yourself or with a
Right.
band and record a record and self finance it. If you did, it was
Yeah.
on like the gear from like 10 years prior in some closet and it came out, but it didn't come out great. So you can look at examples of that. Like you can find the early Twisted Sister records, which apparently like they're not well recorded. They're well thought out, but they're not well recorded because they didn't have a
Right.
major label deal. And when
No.
they finally did get a good deal, like they made a decent record. And then when they
Yep.
finally got their real deal, then they made, two really good records before they disbanded or whatever you want to call that. Um,
Right.
and it's like I see the kind of same things going on in music right now where they don't want to mess with somebody like Twisted Sister who's already making a bunch of money. Because of a marketability concern, but also because they know the business, which is the real reason. So there was a documentary that was done, and so it's on Netflix, I think, called Twisted Effin' Sister. And
Oh, yeah.
if you go
Yep.
watch it, they make out like in the documentary and actually in the interviews, they make out like, well, we weren't they weren't interested in us because we were glam, so they were dressing up like women and stuff. But that really wasn't why they weren't interested. That was a big part of it because it was definitely a male dominated like conservative boys club in the artist community at that point, like the A&R people. But that was only part of it. Like they knew that if they signed them, they already knew the business, and that was going to be a problem. And you can see D. Snyder has gone on to do that in everything he does. Like he knows the business and he knows it very well, which is why he's had a very lucrative career. He works
Right.
very hard to make sure that he's making money, and there's nothing wrong with that. And actually, I think if anything, that kind of it's interesting because I've heard it said by artists, especially local artists I've had conversations with, that people that know the business generally aren't good creatives. I think that's a load of BS. I think it's people who know the business and are good creatives get shafted because they
Right.
know they can't control them. And
Yep.
you'll see a couple of them every once in a while. Like Peter Gabriel's a good example of a guy that he knows the business really well, and he's more creative than most people in the industry. And because of that, like he's gotten shafted on record deals and stuff over his career, so he had to start his own label, and he had to argue with Geffen and all these other companies to get himself distributed. And actually, the funny part was like when he retired from Genesis, he was done. He didn't want to be a part of the industry anymore. He was fine just releasing a record every 5 or 6 years just as like a love letter
Yeah.
to fans. And he ended up having to turn that into a profitable enterprise to support some of his humanitarian endeavors. Um,
Right.
which is an interesting, like, that's an interesting paradigm. You wouldn't see anybody else in the industry that like had the breadth of catalog of somebody like him that understands the business side of it too. Um, if that were true, and I that's why I
Yep.
said I think those people tend to operate on the fringes. Like David Bowie's another classic example of somebody who knew the business well enough to know that he was making friendships with the right people so that he
Right.
could continue to make music. Now he was fortunate enough to be blessed with a lot of success because of his artistic integrity. But if they were asked to take a chance on him, and he sat down at the table and said, "Okay, I want to look at the contract first," I don't know that it ever would have gone anywhere. I
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
Some of these people learned on the job, like, and I think that David Bowie's probably one of them.
Yeah. You take the bands that came up through the clubs and came up through really busting out, um, and paid their dues. Um, like I said, Aerosmith was one of them. A lot of those Boston bands, um, were those, but not the band Boston, but
Well, it's oddly enough you bring that up because Twisted Sister was an East Coast band too.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the point, is that they figured out a way to make money at it long
yeah.
before
New
they were
York City,
popular. You know.
yeah. At that time, New York City was a hotbed. You had in the early '70s, you had a hotbed of musicians that came from New York City. Um, if they didn't come from overseas, you got to remember that was after the British invasion, right? And everything came from over there, and you had this thing. Zeppelin, I think, was really the kind of towards the end of the British invasion.
I would
If you
argue
look
they're
at it,
pretty much the last real British invasion band.
yeah. And then you've got this resurgence of musicians that came up through Boston, through New York, and of course, um, the fight between rock and disco, which was a lot of people think the disco was late '70s, and it wasn't. It started in the early '70s,
Yeah,
and one of the things to look at when you look at the that whole time frame was that there was um, there was a lot of disco and a lot of the solo acts, the acts that weren't bands, they were names, you know. Um, and so as the bands started to come up, from the that early '70s, that was, you whether you like them or don't like them, there was Kiss, like them or don't like them, Boston, it was Aerosmith. I was just looking at Aerosmith. I said, "Really? That was that long ago? Wow!"
yeah,
Couldn't believe it was that long ago.
yeah. That band's almost been around 50.
1973.
The band's almost 50 years old.
Train kept a rolling. I was like, "What? Really?" Um, Bob Seger, who was out of, by the way, Nick will be quick to remind us that he came from Michigan. He was a Detroit boy. Um, there was that whole era. Rush was, a band that came from the folks that were playing. I think that there was that story of a DJ somewhere in the Midwest that played their music while they went to the toilet because the songs were long, and they caught on because it was good. Um, but I find it interesting and amusing that um, we have a whole group of people that think, "Oh, the older music was great." Well, let's remember that the older music did include some real crap too. But what's funny is, like Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin was very Peter Gabriel in his music, believe it or not. Harry Chapin didn't really care how much money he made. He was all about his humanitarian efforts. If you look into Harry Chapin, the guy who wrote Taxi and the guy who wrote, that was the one who did Cats in the Cradle. He was a political activist. This time frame would have been him. He was a Woody Guthrie of his time, the early '70s.
Um,
Died very tragically. But I'm just saying that we're in an awesome age. We really are, because you could publish a song yourself. You could you could do it all. I mean, that
Yeah.
how incredible is
I mean,
that?
honestly, like that's what kills me is that, we talked about I don't think we've talked about Billie Eilish on the show before, but people seem like they're so freaked out by the fact that her whole record was recorded at home. Like, where the hell are you from? Where are you living at? You can get online right now. You can buy all the equipment that the pros use online from one vendor and have it delivered to your house, assemble it, and write and record a record that sounds just as good as anything else. Now, you need
Absolutely.
to know your way around a studio to do it, because you can't just set it up in your living room and hope to God it sounds good. But you can do it.
Yeah.
It's a possibility, and you got to understand, if you're not old enough to understand this is the reality. As early as the mid '80s, having a home studio was like intense luxury.
Oh
Um,
my god.
to have, even just a simple recorder. When those first cassette Porta Studios came out from Tascam, that was like, holy crap, we could do multi-track recording at home. I mean, I knew a guy who was talking about having his home studio in 1980, I think he said it was, and it was really just like 2-inch tape. He had 2 tracks, left
Yeah.
and right, and that is how they did everything. They had a mixer, and every
Yep.
band performed live. There were no punch-ins, there were no corrections, and you had to be good. And actually, I watched to go even further. I watched an episode about how, or I think it's a Sound on Sound YouTube channel. They did a how the records in the 50s were made, and they actually found a studio in England where they had bought all the authentic equipment and had put together this like 1950s rockabilly style studio. And it's like, literally, when you realize that like the Elvis recordings are 2 microphones, you're just like, what? That was because the only
Yeah.
consoles that existed were 2-channel or 4-channel.
The the song Louie Louie. Louie
Yeah, it's
Louie.
probably one microphone.
Oh
One
no.
microphone had to be.
One microphone in
Had
the
to be.
middle of a room.
And it's
That
mono. It's not even stereo.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
think about the luxury we have. I have Cubase, unlimited tracks. I have Cubase Pro, unlimited tracks. And I can
Yep.
record 8 simultaneously. Like, I have eclipsed my forefathers tenfold. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so to sit there and act like you didn't know that Billie Eilish could record a record that won a Grammy in her house just seems nuts to me. Like, where have you been living? Are you under a rock? This has been a thing for like 20 years. Really, in the late
I think
90s, this stuff became attainable. I knew people who bought Pro Tools rigs for their house in the late 90s.
yeah, but even early Pro Tools rigs were relatively expensive.
Oh,
The
sure,
software was
the early
expensive,
ones, but in the
the
late 90s,
interfaces. Yeah.
you could get a 4416 interface from them for like $5,000. And if you're going to be
Yeah.
doing like 16 tracks and you were going to record your buddies, you could charge them a little bit and you could pay for the interface. People did it.
Yeah.
I
I'm
remember
just saying that
there was a time, Jim, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off this time, but
uh
there was a time back then when the default home studio setup was the interface I was talking about, right? Like Pro Tools interface in a rack, and then next to it was this Mackie, like um it was like 18 by, or it was like, no, it was a 16 by 16 by 32 bus mixer,
Yep.
digital mixer, and like that's what everyone had. Like you'd see people posting their like home studio online, and it would be exactly that, and you're sitting there going, really?
Yeah.
That predates me playing guitar, but you can go on Wayback Machine, you can check it out. You'll see that was the thing. And later on it, kind of diversified. A lot of people went
Well, if
ADATs after that, which was weird. Like
yeah,
you were going direct to
ADAT.
your PC, and then you took a step back and started recording the VHS tapes. Whatever.
Yep, a lot of people I knew were up to ADAT. Um, the the thing that was a problem early on was PCs weren't really there was a lot of lag, a lot of drop frames, a lot of dropped, stuff
Almost
that,
almost all those dudes were running Macs back then too, because you didn't have that extrapolation layer, so you could
yeah.
run basically driverless.
Yep.
And that was basically the way you did it because that was the only way you could make it work reliably.
Yeah. The the other part of it was if you were sitting down, let's say like now, you and I could for $100. I'm just gonna throw this out there. For $100, I have 8 tracks in Ableton Live, plus whatever loops I want and stuff. Before, if I had a fader that had to move, like if I had to pull a fader, if you had a little bit of delay of you pulling that fader, can you imagine how bad that affects your mix? You were
Yeah,
trying to like,
yeah,
I mean, and now and punching in, you had to be able to punch it that delay. You had to know what the delay was when you're punching. I mean, I can't imagine that, and that's why I think um, there was still that love of ADAT in the beginning. Once once PCs, because remember Macs were expensive. Macs are still expensive,
yeah.
and
Back then they were
a
more expensive.
PC, yeah. Not to say that my PC right now costs eighteen
No,
hundred
well,
bucks
I'm just saying in with the rate of
without a
inflation,
monitor.
with the rate of inflation back then to do it, you'd need a Mac Pro, and like
Yeah.
you were paying, it's like 4,000 bucks
Yeah, a friend of
back
mine had
then.
a friend of mine had a publishing studio, because he made signs and stuff like that. He had a Mac on the back end, that was his thing. So he had 2 Macintosh or yeah, Mac Macintoshes, and he spent, I wanna say 12 grand on the Macs, and then he still had to buy interface equipment
Yeah.
for Macs, and the problem we ran into for a short time, I don't know if you remember this, is when companies would make a device, it was Mac or it was PC,
Yeah.
and then very few devices worked on both.
And you know what the
That
funny
was the
part
other.
you know what the funny part about that, Jim, is? The only difference was drivers. So if you knew
I
what
know, that's
drivers and for the Windows equivalent, you could get them to run. It wasn't like the hardware was any different. It came in a different box.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I know, and but all I'm saying is, so if you take, I mean, let's face it, most sound engineers aren't exactly computer savvy. Um, they know how to work their software and
Sure,
they know how to use the, but
sure.
as far as that goes, but I don't know why I'm letting this piece of hair bother me, but I am. But the the fact is that there were so many still hardware things. Now, Billie Eilish, I mean, I think the bigger problem with Billie Eilish wasn't exactly that she ran it her album in her home. I think the bigger problem with Billie Eilish was people were like, "Oh, this girl has to suck. She has to. She has no backing, so she has to suck. She has no this, so she has to suck." And
I'm not.
I saw her live,
I
and I
wasn't
went,
really commenting on that. I was commenting on the fact that
"Yeah,
I've actually seen people say, "I can't believe she recorded this at home. Like, how is that even
yeah,
possible?"
yeah." I
What?
right, and I saw her do like one of those things, where they go to a radio station and they play. And I was ready for her to suck. I was ready for major suckage, and I was amazed. I actually liked that better than the one that she recorded, only because I thought she had a little more emotion, and there were certain things I like better. I'm not saying that was, I'm
I
just saying I
I
enjoyed it more.
I think they were prone to recording a record like that. I think they were prone to making it perfect because
Yeah.
and sucking all the life out of it too, because
Yes.
they were given infinite record time. So that's one of the things you got to remember. It's like a lot of we talked about this show. A lot of these great records are great because of mistakes, and the reason why
Yep.
they're great because of mistakes is because they didn't have much time in the studio. They were only given a certain amount of money, and so they go in and they try to do everything in 3 hours, and then they go,
Yep.
"Well, there's a mistake on that," and then the guy goes, "I really don't want to have to punch that in. We've only got 15 minutes," So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, print it.
Yeah. Yeah. A completely different writing process. And a completely different production process.
Right.
You take like an interview with David Gilmour, and we was talking about the writing process of I think it was Echoes, and he was talking about how it started out, where they were just doing this E minor jam, and it was this live thing, and they would test the songs on the audiences.
Hmm.
You don't hear about that anymore. You don't
I do that.
really. Yeah, I'm talking about the big
Yeah,
Big
like
deal. And
right,
I think it's coming back. I think it will come back. I think Billie Eilish
whatever.
is a, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure she doesn't care how I I pronounce it. She's laughing her way out of the bank. Um, but I think that somebody like her, we needed somebody like her. We needed somebody like her to say, "You
We
know
needed
what,
a
record
total amateur.
company," and yeah, she is the Joe Bonamassa of pop music. She's the one that said to the record company, everybody else, like, "F you, I'm gonna do what I wanna do, and if you don't like it, tough I'm gonna make these songs, and I'm gonna put them out, and
Does she
people will
have
buy
a?
them."
Do we know if she has a major deal yet?
I don't know.
Because I wouldn't be surprised to find out she's totally like outside the system at that point because she did the
Mm,
record at home. I mean,
yeah,
that's essentially her being like "f you" to the man, pretty much. I
yeah,
mean,
okay.
um, I don't know. I
I mean, I know some people aren't Bonamassa fans, but the
no,
fact is that he pulled he pulled that with the record company. He said, "You know what? I don't need your and I do this myself. I don't need you."
I don't know if I don't really know if most people could have pulled off what she did. But
No, I don't
I
think
will say this: the potential is there for you to do it. And if you want to live up to
yes.
that potential, it's definitely something that you can investigate and pursue. And I'm willing to bet that you could make a record at home and
Yeah.
it'll be to the best of your talent and ability level. Um,
Well, somebody had to pay for her videos. Her videos are pretty well,
as I'm
uh
saying, I think she did get backing, but it may have been after they recorded it. I don't know. It's weird because it's a weird situation. Normally that doesn't happen that way. And I
no.
don't know. I don't have all the details, but
I know that, who's the other woman we spoke highly of, Saint Vincent.
yeah.
She talks about how she I'm sure she has a record label, but she talked about how she would do things, at home, come up with all this stuff at home,
Well, yeah,
so
she demos everything, and like that's what I do too. And I think most people are doing that now at this point. Even Tosin Abasi was talking about the fact that like he's way behind on demoing because he never really learned to do any engineering stuff. So he's like, I would just go into the studio and do it. And it's funny because now it's like I'm really interested to hear the next Animals as Leaders record because I have a feeling it's going to be very different because now he's not making stuff on the fly. Um, and I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more well thought out. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. With somebody like
yeah,
him, I suspect it'll be good, but um, that's an interesting juxtaposition, though. Like demoing at home versus demoing in a studio. Uh, you certainly have more time to let your ideas percolate. From a writing perspective, we've been asked about writing before in the show. I find it if you're a local independent artist, open mics and that kind of thing are even small live shows are really the best way to write your music. Get up on stage, jam the idea out, and just see what happens and keep doing
yeah,
it because you'll play to the audience. And what'll happen is you'll start to form full ideas. And ideally, you would like to record this so that you can go back and tap into that energy when you need to actually record the song. But I've been doing that, and I gotta tell you, man, my stuff's improved a lot. Just getting in front of people and getting their reaction as I'm doing it, and it feeds into my ideas about how things are supposed to work. And it's not
yeah,
like don't take it to be like I'm getting in front of an audience so that they can so I can crowdsource my music. That's not really what's going on here. I'm not trying to get the audience to write the song for me. What I'm trying to do is to find out like what thought processes are going on in my head that are shaping it. And
right.
how I can reapproach that when I'm sitting down to record it.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that. I think, again, it comes to, like what I was saying about David Gilmour. He was talking about how, you measure the crowd's response, and
Yeah,
in the moment, you can change the way that you are viewing the song, and it might be because you're playing to a crowd, of course, I'm talking about Pink Floyd here. They're playing to a crowd in Italy tonight, Greece tomorrow, and Israel the next day or whatever. Um, there's a there's a definite, difference in the way they would do it than the way we would do it. But still, let's face it. I mean, those bands that we talked about earlier, those Aerosmiths and those other Boston type bands, the New York bands that came out, the New York Dolls and the oh come on, Blitzkrieg Bach and what the heck is the name of that band? The Ramones. Um, you know, Kiss and so on and so forth. They were playing those songs for people like night after night after night. They got good at it.
Hmm.
They could they could play them well, they could record them well, they put life into them. You didn't have to ask them to create life into a song.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I'm not saying that's better or worse or anything like that. I'm just saying that it definitely because it grew in front of an audience, to play it in front of an audience, you've already got it down. You are the master of that song. Your band knows it. That's one thing that, what the heck's his name? The guy that has the production YouTube video channel, angry all the time.
Glenn Fricker.
Glenn Fricker, thank you.
You
I
said
was just
angry all the
watching
time. I'm like, yeah, I know you're talking about. Go ahead. Let's
I
go
was
ahead.
just watching a video of his where he was trying to talk about his favorite, recording, experiences, and he was talking about how, like, there were certain bands he recorded with that really knew the music. They knew how to play it. Um, and that I and each time he spoke of that, he spoke to the fact that these guys knew, men and women, by the way. I'm using guys in a generic sense, not in a sexual sense or gender. It's genderless, guys. Sense. Anyway, these folks knew the songs inside and out, and could play them backwards and forwards. When you think about, go back to Freebird, one of the greatest jam songs I think of all time. Um, I know people would throw a bunch of songs by the Grateful Dead or Fish or whatever, Mo at me, but for me, that outro solo is just incredible. Listen to those 3 guitars and what they're doing. That you don't plan that. You don't write that down, go, "Okay." Producer go, "Okay, now what I'm gonna have you do is you're gonna play G major pentatonic in this position. While you're doing that, I want you to play this thing over this, and okay, now, you are gonna play the slide thing over here, but you're gonna pull the slide off. You're just gonna throw it on the floor and start playing." That's not what happened. These guys had played that song a bazillion times live, and then they pulled it off in the studio. And I'm sure that guys like that like Fish and Mo and the Grateful Dead and stuff did the same type of thing. I'm just using what one of my favorites is as an example that it came about in the studio, came about right there in the heat of the moment. I was just listening to it yesterday. Uh, And my son I said to my son who's 20, my son Kyle, I said "Sorry, buddy, I know this song is old and you probably don't like it." He goes, "No, Dad, I love this song. This is a good song." He said, "This is really good." And so and then I said to him, I said, "Listen to these parts." And I took the guitar down and I was playing different parts for him and showing him, "This is what's going on here, and this is what's going on here, and this is what's going on here." And it gave him a new appreciation for it. For what the guys were doing. And suddenly the song went from here with him to like this, because he knew the work that was involved, the the effort that went into the tune. I don't know.
I
Maybe I'm just
I think so. Yes, obviously the outro to that is pretty chaotic, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and they're playing the chords and stuff. They're all good players. Um, I feel like there are definitely times where things that are spontaneous were cooked up though, and not necessarily in that band, but I mean like I there are guys out there that do that kind of stuff. Um,
yeah.
Frank Zappa used to do that kind of stuff. He would be scary good at saying, "You're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that," and then it comes out sounding like music, and you're going, "How the hell did that happen?" Um,
Right, but I'm sure that those cooked up parts, which I'm sure there are some of them, were because they had cooked it up after cooking it
oh yeah,
up,
definitely.
okay? 100 times, whatever number of
Read
times
about
in
the
front
black
of people
page.
when, before YouTube was there for them to allow them to get up, and to, you know, and yeah, wow, that's just the way I remember it. I can imagine somebody sitting at home, the first time they get I think that was on Street Survivors album. They pull it out, they put it on, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's just the way I remember seeing it live just a few months ago." And then no, it wasn't. It wasn't exactly that way, but it's okay because it had that feel, it had that punch, it had that movement. Talk about taking a slow, melodic, just almost boring song. To me, that beginning is so boring. I'm like, and then but it's the build, and that's why I listen to it. It's because it builds into what it does. They just a run. It's like going for a walk to a jog to a sprint to a run to a sprint. You know,
um, wow, this is a long way away from Neil Schoen's rack rig.
it is, but Neil Schon, I don't think as much as I think that's why he learned to hate Journey at a certain point was because he couldn't do that live. When he was live, when the lights go down in the city, he had to play the solo the same way, don't stop believing. He had to play that. He had to play that every time. I mean, that's the only time he had any fun. Hey, look at this! I can do this.
um, I don't think Neil Schoen cared. I think Neil Schoen cared about money. And I think that
Some
as
point.
soon as they started to make money in Journey, that's all that really mattered there. And
Yeah.
yeah, they wrote some good songs, but I mean, obviously, like they cashed in on some good songs too. Like they cashed in a lot. Their greatest hits is still one of like the 10 best selling records of all time, I think. But I just going back to the rack rig for a second, like there's definitely ego there. There's definitely like
Oh,
excess, rock and roll excess.
yeah.
I think is the appropriate term. Um, I don't know how long we've been recording actually. We got time. So
We got time.
I feel like um I feel like as far as the endorsement side of that thing is concerned, like it's no big deal. I think everybody at this point, if you think that the rig rundowns are totally legit all the time, you're crazy. I can point you to a couple that are absolutely false. And you'd be crazy to believe them. Um, two of them belong to Billy Gibbons, which we've talked about on the show before. You know that guy said he used like 7 X Pandoras chained together for his drive sound at one point. Do you know what 7 X Pandoras would sound like chained together? It would sound like a wet fart. I mean, it would just be. It's just disgusting. Because you're talking about like so the X Pandora is basically a rat, and it's a rat that has a clipping mode that gets it into just to fuzz mode too if you have that engaged. So just picture putting 7 rats, 7 rat distortion pedals in a line, and then hitting an open chord. That's basically what he's saying he did.
I think the reason that he was using 7 X Pandoras together is maybe. I'm saying maybe. I'm just trying to give the benefit of the doubt
I'm
here.
sure you have the Guitar One magazine laying around at your house somewhere where he
I have
actually
it.
said that. You should dig it
I
out
have it.
and read the article because I have a feeling if you read the article, if I recall, his tech actually says they're all on.
Yeah. Yeah. 7 or 9 of them. I wanna say it was 9, but it might have been
Yeah,
7.
yeah, it's an absurd. Either way,
It was
each
an
number is
absurd number.
absurd.
Oh, yeah. But the thing that I would give the benefit of the doubt is if he had them just a little bit, each one had a little bit of
Okay,
gain.
so do you know what happens if you put a mid-range boost into a mid-range boost, Jim? It becomes a double mid-range boost. You
No.
can't do what you're suggesting you're doing. Like that doesn't work because what's going to happen is you're going to be now in terms of distortion it'll work fine, but these pedals change the tonal character of the whole sound. So by the end of it, it's going to sound like a wah wah pedal. I mean, it's going to be like what? Same thing happened when they did that when they did the Sweetwater pedal demo. where they put all of the
Oh,
pedals,
there
the
was like
world's
300
yeah, the
pedals
world's
or
largest
something like
pedal
that.
board or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you could tell that like the guitar signal by the time they got through a couple of the boards was just like not even there
Garbage.
anymore. It was you were just listening to it was like listening to a synth filter,
I don't
because
care
that's
how
basically what it is.
yeah, I don't care how clean the tone is going in. That many pedals is gonna have noise in it somewhere in the chain.
Noise is part of it. So like that's what we saw with the world's greatest biggest pedal board demo. Is like basically it just became a freaking radio antenna, and
Yeah.
picked up all white noise in the tri-state area. Um,
Yeah. Well, that's
I mean, I don't even think you'd see static on your TV with that going. Um, no, I'm kidding. Uh, but just think of it think of it as like stacking multiple filters on top of one another. If you stack
well, it's
a negative 12 dB bass cut on top of another negative 12 dB bass cut, you're gonna have no bass. And you're down negative 24 dB, and then you're gonna stack
right.
another one, so now you're down negative 36. At this point, it's almost
How many
inaudible.
did they have, like, what, 308 pedals in that board? I don't remember the number now. I'm
Yeah,
trying
it's
to
crazy. It's
for
like
some reason,
300,
that number
300
stuck
something.
in my head, but I could be it
It
was
might even be more
803.
than that. I think it might have been every pedal that they had in inventory, which I think that was the case. They used one of each.
I mean, I can't imagine because any pedal is gonna create a small amount of noise, even if
Yeah,
it's microscopic, it's gonna create a small amount of noise. And then it's gonna amplify the small amount of noise it gets, and then that's gonna amplify a small amount of noise it gets, and that's
right.
gonna amplify at some point, that becomes untamable. Did they
Yes.
I don't honestly remember now, did they show it on and it was like,
It
you know?
sounded like the world's most ridiculous reverb because it was just reverbing white noise and delaying white
Yeah.
noise because they put all the reverb and delay at the end. And I think
And did they
they put some other stuff at the end too, but
did they play a chord into it? Was it Rob Scallion? Scanlon?
Rob Scallon actually made a song out of it, debatably. Which I think he actually had to go through and individually turn every pedal on. That was part of the world record thing. Um,
Yeah.
and it was, I mean, you can go watch the video. I don't think it's a usable idea, but what I'm saying is like the the combined effect of like taking the same pedal over and over is
Yeah.
almost like logarithmically doing what that pedal does. It's like
Right.
just escalating it. And yes, obviously there'd be a noise issue too, but um, I just don't see Billy Gibbons using 7 Vixonic Expandoras or 9 or 10
Oh, yeah. I mean,
do you remember what the amp was? Because I remember what the amp was. It was a Fender
no,
it
it
was a
was
Fender Deluxe, a
that was
1 by
a
12
deluxe.
a 1 by
Yeah.
12 Fender Deluxe.
1 by 12 deluxe. Yeah. I will pull that out. Somewhere there's like a drawing of it,
Yeah, it's
and
a
it's
Guitar
like
Geek diagram, yeah. And
yeah.
I was
It was
laughing
either Guitar One or Guitar World. I wanna say it was Guitar One.
because even at
Um,
that time he had the endorsement with Crate. And he was using the Crate Blue Voodoos on stage. Obviously, he wasn't using those. And then later on, he does a rig rundown on YouTube from Premier Guitar, and they go through his rig, and his tech shows this like Marshall preamp, and he says that they weren't
yep,
running into a power amp; they ran it direct to the PA with a
yep,
31 band EQ set to do a speaker model. And I was
yep.
just laughing because I'm like, "There's no way in hell they're doing that either." Like
Yeah.
they
It's
may
like
be
a
using
JMP1.
yeah, he may be using the JMP1, but somewhere there's a dummy cab in a
Yeah.
in an enclosure that's mic'd up, and his tech didn't want to show what the cabinet was because it was something
I
there's
haven't seen
some
them
voodoo in it,
live since oh, geez.
I
Eliminator.
saw him 5 6 years ago. Um,
Honestly,
not a guitar amp on stage.
yep, I saw them live back in Eliminator/Escalator slash Escalator or whatever the other
Yeah,
album was. It was exactly the same album. Um, and it was a cool thing, but, Dusty was first of all, Mike was in the midst of his big time in alcohol problems, and Dusty, the bass player, was trying to do keys as well. So a lot of times he wouldn't play bass; he was just playing keys. Not that his bass parts are. I've never played a a difficult bass line to ZZ Top.
No, but
I
they're always
I
spot on though. That's what's crazy about it.
that that is exactly right. He is a physical timepiece. He's a living, breathing metronome.
So is
That guy.
Dusty, and so is Dusty, which is what neither of those
That's what I'm
guys
saying.
really they you know, like they are respected in their respected instruments, but it's like when you listen to their music, you're like, why? And
Yeah,
even like Billy Gibbons, I think for the guitar community, we all realize like he's not like this super crazy guitar player, but we know that the parts he comes up with could be described as tasty, and they're perfect, and
he
that's
plays. He plays surprisingly stays away from A&E that most people play, and he plays in G and C a lot. And he plays majors more
it's he
than
likes
most.
a lot of open G for slide. That's why.
Yeah, yeah. I like his playing. I always did. Uh, and the latest thing they did, I liked. They just haven't been able to tour it, so I haven't been able to go see them. I was really let down when they were opening for Kid Rock. I was like, really, you're opening for Kid Rock? That you've
They were
sunk to the bottom.
I think they were actually co-headlining that tour. That they
Yeah, I
were
don't know.
opening for them, but some dates they went first, and some dates Kid Rock went
Yeah.
first. So
Yeah, when they came to my area, they were the openers. I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to see I'd rather not see Kid Rock at all."
I think I saw them the
But,
year after they did that. I think
yeah,
that's when I saw them. But
that makes sense. Um, so again, uh, I don't know. I see a lot of these rig rundowns, but I remember that when I watch them, I remember that they get paid to say certain things. I mean, certain people get paid to say certain things. Some of these musicians get paid to hold guitars in on magazine covers while they're playing a different guitar.
you won't see Bill Keller of Mastodon with his Line Six Helix in a rig rundown.
Right,
That's what's
because it's
hilarious.
not cool enough.
He's got his Friedmans. He's got all the
Yeah,
other stuff, but the last couple of times I've seen him out on various incarnations, he's got a Helix on the floor. It's hilarious because he
yeah,
has no amps and a Helix on the floor because they're
yeah,
doing flight dates now,
yeah.
so they
It's
can't
just
take
realistic.
a Friedman on the road like that.
Yeah,
So
we've talked about that before.
well, but the thing is, for him, he's got those deals, and now it's like I can't tell anybody what I'm using. So you see these pictures
Right.
in the Helix group, and they're like unofficial pictures of like him playing guitar, and on the floor there's a Helix in front of him, and you're like, is that Photoshop? No, that's the real deal. Um,
Yeah. Is that a variax in his hands? There's so many questions. You know, the fact is that, there are so many gimmicks that musicians use. We've talked about this so many times. And you cannot sit down and say, "Oh, my favorite musician," with the exception of possibly Angus Young, uses X. Because you get a guy like Angus Young, he uses a certain guitar and a certain amp. Or Brian May, certain guitar, certain amp.
he's
Those
certain.
guys were
Neither of those guys certainly would know if their tone would know offhand if their tone had unless somebody had done it. You know, as like a mix engineer had taken their raw
right,
guitar and then put it through Nax Effects. Um,
right.
but yeah, no, they're the kind of guys in the studio. They're like, no, we ain't doing it that way. Give me my amp. Um,
Eric
and
Johnson.
Eric Johnson as well. Like, but other than that, actually, I wouldn't even be shocked to find out Eric Johnson is using Nax Effects. And you know why? Because Eric Johnson has told people for years, you know, things like, oh, well, I use single coil pickups and whatever. And then he's using, you know, DiMarzio HS3 in his famous Strat, the one that he plays out at Virginia, and stuff like that. And oh yeah, I use these Marshall 100 watt super leads to record, you know, this song or whatever. And then turns out it was like his Dumble Overdrive special and in a 335. You know, like I honestly think he just it's what he can do in the
He's
moment.
trolling his up.
It's what he can
He's
do.
trolling people.
It's what he can do in the moment. No, I just don't think he
Yeah.
remembers. Like,
Yeah.
it's not all that important to him. He knows that they got the sound, and that's how it sounded, and that's what was in his head, and then it didn't get committed to memory. You know, it's like that kind of thing.
Yep.
Because I had to find out from somebody else that you know Cliffs of Dover was the 335 and the Overdrive special, but I don't think you were necessarily going to find that out from him, and I don't think I've ever heard him mention it that like he's Dumble. In fact, I found videos of him with his Dumble, live
Yeah.
videos on YouTube, in the 80s, before, right after Tones came out, but before the Cliffs of Dover record. And there he was. Obvi Music is the Cliffs of Dover record, by the way. And there he was, like playing with a Dumble Overdrive special in a live gig. And
Yep.
it's like, okay, that's how that happened, you know. I remember
Yeah.
seeing one of my favorite photos of him growing up was him playing an SG at the House of Blues somewhere, and I'm like,
Yeah.
SG, like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Huh? Um,
Well, I think, you see Carlos Santana, right? And of course he's always, always, always with a
yeah,
PRS.
PRS now because he's an endorsement.
But but guess what? All the albums I like that he recorded, because I other than I think what was the one that he did that was collaborations, that
Supernatural.
he did,
He's into
yeah,
this.
Supernatural.
Supernatural 1
Yeah.
and 2.
Yeah. So was it Supernatural 1 and Supernatural 2, which I like both those albums. I'm just saying that all the ones I love from back in the day, Abraxas and everything else, that was an SG.
It wasn't even
So
an SG, Jim. It was an SG Junior.
Junior, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was an SG. It was the most basic bitch
Yeah, I
SG.
yeah, it was like the cheapo model. Um, but man, he made it play and used a lot of mescaline to do it. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, incredible player.
yes,
Um,
certainly. I don't know.
I mean, let's face it. Angus Young might not have used a Junior, but he only used one pickup.
But I'm just saying, like, nothing is sacred anymore, especially
No,
when it comes to getting guitar tones. I don't know. I think we actually have this interpretation. They actually, based on people's reputations and how things have gone since we've grown up and stuff, like that that was the case at some point, that people would not have manipulated their guitar 5 ways from Sunday to get it to do what they wanted to, and that's complete crap. Because I mean, you listen to some of these guitar tones, reeling in the years, like that song was direct to a board, like
yeah, through an envelope filter.
yeah, through an envelope filter. And then there was another song I was thinking of, where they were doing crazy stuff like that, and that's not all of the Nile Rodgers stuff. The Nile Rodgers like
Direct,
rhythm stuff is
yep,
direct to the board,
direct.
and
Nothing in
that's
between.
blasphemy. That's
Yep.
absolute blasphemy. You know what I mean? Like, um, so just remember that just because
Well,
your
this is what
guy's
we
got
have to
an
we have to
endorsement,
remind
that doesn't mean he
people
knows what he's using.
that we have to remind people though that was a 60. What was that? A 67 Strat, 68 Strat. It was mid to late 60s, right?
Yeah, something
It
like
was it was a bastard child, so it had the neck of one year and the body of another. But anyway, it was a Stratocaster direct to the board. But we have to remind people that those records, those boards, had tube inputs. You had a tube pre.
that. Yeah, but even then, I mean, they weren't designed to
I'm
do what
not
they're not designed with that level of harmonic distortion
right.
that a guitar amp would be designed with. I've heard it said that
No, he didn't want that.
boards target a 0.01% amount of harmonic distortion,
Yeah.
whereas guitar
Yeah.
amps target around 10. So
If you if you listen to those early records, it's supposed to sound like that. I mean, you know, when you listen to the stuff that Sheik did, and that was hot. And he's playing 2 or 3 strings at a time, almost all the time.
mostly two,
2
mostly
most of
two,
the time.
because he gave
Sometimes a 3rd string.
who is he? He was on No Guitar Safe with Jude Gold, and he gave
Yeah,
Jude Gold all kinds of crap because
yeah,
Jude Gold was like showing him this thing, and he's like, I didn't do it that way, like
yeah.
two strings,
Here's
not
how I did it.
three. Yeah, two strings, not three. You're sloppy. Oh
I've
man,
seen several interviews where he talks about and he shows it. He
yeah,
shows how he just did it with 2 strings.
yeah.
And he said, "I had to run the rest of the band was the ones picking up those harmonies. I'm not stepping on their toes. They're not stepping on mine." I mean, it's just funny,
If
to watch him play that
if
stuff.
you want to hear a guitar player who really knows how to fit into a band more so than anybody else, there's him and there's Carlos Alomar, and those two guys made a career out of being able to fit into a band, and fit into the context of what's going on and not step out front. I don't think I can ever remember a time where like now Rogers was like, look at me, I'm gonna be Eddie Van Halen for a second. And
Yep.
but his style is like so respected because he
Yeah.
knew how to fit what they were doing.
He never had anything to prove.
Right.
I think that's the big part. There was never about his ego. It was always about what fits the song. You hear so many musicians talk about that. I played what fit the song. I played what fit the song. Um, and to be honest, a guy like Stevie Ray Vaughan, that's what he was doing. He was playing to fit the song. But the song was the boisterous guitar that he was doing. Jimi Hendrix is the same way. I mean, when you've only got three things, and whether we think they're good singers or not, they did not think they were great singers. Ergo, they compensated in their own minds, say, okay, my guitar playing is going to be the better part of the singing. I think it was Eric Clapton who said he didn't even like to hear the sound of his own voice as
That
well. And he
Jimmy,
was,
yeah, Jimmy said that.
yeah. And so he would play to, he's like, all right, bring the voice down, 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 down in the mix. Want to hear my guitar?
That might be Eric on that one. But anyway,
Yeah.
well, we've been
What's your favorite? Let me
go ahead.
ask you something.
Yeah.
What's your very favorite? If you had to pick one Jimi Hendrix song, what's your very favorite? Which one would it be?
If 6 was 9.
6 was 9?
Yeah,
For
because
me,
it's
it's
like
Dolly.
Dolly Dagger, right?
Yeah,
So
Dolly Dagger.
the reason why I say if 6 was 9 is because for
Yep.
me it's completely representative of his entire catalog. And it is the most psychedelic piece of music I've ever heard. I mean, he's freaking just going on a recorder. And
Yeah.
and for like the longest time I thought it was backwards guitar sped up. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, I mean he's literally on the recorder. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. When I found that out, I was like, "No. Really? Is that how he did that?" And I found this out like recently, like in the last week or two. And I just had a moment and I was like, "Really? I didn't know that." Like I just I had no inclination. But I feel like that's also Jimmy's words to everybody about how he lived his life and also about how he was going to die because he actually
Yeah.
talks about his own death in that song. Um,
Yeah, it's
that's
kind of spooky.
really kind of messed up. And there are a few, so like Freddie Mercury in one of his songs also spoke about his own death. And there are very few people that have done that. But I think the
Yep.
interesting is like Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, and Freddie
Yep.
Mercury. But when Freddie Mercury did it, was thinly veiled. When Jim
Right.
Morrison did it, it was done poetically. When Jimi Hendrix did it, it was like, I'm the one that's going to die when it's time for, that has to die when it's time for me to die. Like, when you think about that for a minute, like, he's addressing you directly and talking about his death, and they do it indirectly.
Right.
So that's always been a personal thing. That's why I love If 6 Was 9 so much. There's a lot going on there.
Sorry, folks. I had a gnat fly into my throat.
That's better than COVID-19.
What's that?
That's
No.
better than COVID-19.
Yeah, much better. It just flew right in there. It was like, I'm sitting there saying, yeah, and it went, and I heard it. I felt it hit them.
We'll slow it down and we'll replay it a couple times when we this episode. We've been on
me,
here.
Dolly Dagger.
Yeah, go ahead. You tell me about Dolly Dagger.
The reason I love Dolly Dagger so much is the way that the guitar, for me, in that song, and he does it in a few songs, but for me, it was the most effective. The guitar becomes a voice in that song. He so layered the guitar with his voice during the vocals when he's singing. Usually, his guitar almost like, I don't want to say take a back seat.
He's doing a Nile Rodgers thing in that song. Like it's very much like, hey, let's see what we can get my own guitar to fit with itself. And the parts are very much in the vein of like that funky stuff, you know?
Yep.
I'm very familiar with all of Hendrix's catalog, so you got some others ones you want to talk about? Like, I'm listening to the song in my head as we're talking about this.
Oh, yeah, me too. I'm listening to that chorus
Yeah.
and the way he's playing the guitar, like, listen to my guitar sing the
You
words.
know where you hear
It's so
that
incredible.
do you know where you hear that again, though? The funky rhythm playing and stuff in that song?
What's that?
Bridge of Sighs, that record, Day of the Eagle.
Yeah,
Day of the
yep.
Eagle specifically
Day of the
on that
Eagle.
song. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's Trower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but
Another
hey,
another incredible player.
I saw this stuff happen, so I'm gonna do it too.
Yeah, exactly, and I mean, when you think back to the time frame, when did Bridge of Sighs come out? 70
73, I think.
Siri, right? Yeah, yeah.
73, 74.
73, so he was probably writing that, 72, pretty much right after we lost,
Yeah,
Hendrix.
Hendrix, right?
70, we lost him in 70, and and I'm
Oh,
sure it was kind of a
we got I gotta switch. We
yeah.
had somebody in our group. So I posted the thing about Brian May, from Guitar World magazine readers poll, which is actually not even a
Oh,
Guitar
yeah.
World. It was a British magazine post,
Right.
and Total Guitar, right? And so it's fine, no big deal. Brian May won a Reader's Choice poll, so he's allegedly now the best guitar player ever, in a Reader's Choice poll, which means that literally nothing to me. Um,
Yep.
And the fact is, like, I love Brian May. Brian May is one of my favorite guitar players of all time. He's in my top
Yep,
10 list. And I know people
yep,
like,
definitely.
you never talk about him on the show. It's because, like, I don't talk about everybody on the show.
Right, right.
But realistically, like, I've even looked at getting like Red Special style guitars and stuff before because I really like his playing. I you know Anyway, long story short, he wins, right? And if you know anything about Brian May's like biggest hero was Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles,
That's right.
because that was like a big part of
Yep,
their idea of like how they approach things. Like, what would Jimmy do? What would the Beatles do? Um,
right.
and a lot of the Queen material you can see is like referencing a lot of that stuff. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
anyway, um, he wins. Great job, right? And then
Mhm.
I said in the group, like, basically posted this. And I said, well, how much would that suck to be in that position where like you've replaced your hero? Do you know what I mean? Like, how much would you have? Like, well, how would you handle it? Now, of course, Brian May, classiest guy on earth, so he handles it with
Right.
wonderful like applause, basically, and
Yeah.
says essentially that yeah, I'm just glad people really like it, and it's like it's amazing to me that you would put me in front of him, but um, whatever. So I said that, and then somebody in our group, I don't even remember who, and I'm not calling people out, but somebody in the group came in and they said like Jimi Hendrix is not a good guitar player, or like they
Yeah.
were weighing
Was sloppy.
towards that or
Yeah.
whatever. It's like honestly, like I didn't say it because I'm not a jerk and I'm not like this kind of a person, but I was thinking like, get the hell out of here! Like we don't even want you here. Like what are you doing here? Um, and I saw a similar post earlier last week, and I actually posted and replied, and I said false. So he said
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix is an overrated sloppy player, and I said false. Didn't
Yeah,
provide any
I
information. Didn't provide anything because there's no information needed. If you
right.
think he's sloppy, it's because you got problems. Like something in your head doesn't allow you to understand the historical context in which Jimi Hendrix lived. All right,
I
so
don't think it's I don't think it's the problem of that. I think we go back to what we talked about with Billie Eilish's record. It's that there's this there is this okay, so I'll take us way back. 1986 or so. I'm having a discussion with a friend of mine about about music and records. And he was a Bad Company fan and he was a Boston fan, blah blah blah. And I said, have you ever sat down and listened to Zeppelin or you sit and listen to Hendrix? So, oh no, I can't listen to that. I go, why? He goes, oh, that stuff's just too sloppy. It's garbage. I mean, we're talking about the 80s. And so I asked him, I said, what he goes, yeah, I don't even like live music. It's just I can't stand music that's not perfect and dead on and precise all the way through. He goes, I can't listen to live music either because it sounds too sloppy. So there are people who, once they've heard quote unquote perfection in music, they can't listen to something that's imperfect. Even the bands he liked, he wouldn't go see live because of that very reason. He was
This
he
person was a musician.
no,
No.
no, he was just a
That's
but
exactly
that's what
what
I'm saying.
then there you go. That's it. So that's the and I know people like that even now. They're like, I don't want to watch a live concert. Well,
Right.
my wife actually had told me that at one point. It was like, I'm not really all that into live music. And I said, that's because you don't know how to experience it. Now she'll watch live music with me all the time.
Right.
Because she realized like that's the true measure of a band. If the band comes out and does a completely rehearsed show every single night with the same banter, it's embarrassing.
Yep.
And I see it all the time. It's like, hello, Chicago. And then tomorrow it's hello, Virginia Beach. And then tomorrow it's hello,
Right.
LA. And it's like, who cares? We all know it's rehearsed. Stop it. We don't want to see that. Just play
Which
the
is why
damn
they get the
songs.
city wrong half the time.
Yeah, they do. I actually have heard that in person before. Um, so this is the other thread that I saw that I thought was a little bit more interesting. And it was still a troll thread, but it was like, it was more well thought out because they were like, Jimi Hendrix or Tosin Abasi is a better guitar player than Jimi Hendrix. And I responded, and this is what I said, and this is going to be my final thought for the episode. I think we should just leave on this. But my
Yep.
response was this: Tosin Abasi has great shoulders to stand on, which include Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix's shoulders, the shoulders he stood on, were much smaller.
Yeah.
I have been David,
I'm a Jim.
and tonight we have been the Practical Guitarists.